Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, and animal conservation. Y'all, it's been an interesting week, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But I need to start off by saying that we have a new patron that we have welcomed to the Rossifari family. Amanda Berg, welcome to the family. And as a friendly reminder to y'all, everyone who joins my Patreon at either the Binturong or Red Panda level will get a free monthly sticker from Cappy Trails based on one of the recent podcast episodes. Now, these stickers are patron exclusives, and every Binturong and Red Panda level patron will get one. But if anyone at that level wants to buy an additional sticker, or if any patrons at lower levels want to buy one, I'll set something up so that you can. And don't forget that you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. And actually, Patreon recently set up a free tier that you can sign up and be a patron without money. You won't get access to any of the bonus content or anything like that if you sign up to be a free patron, but you'll still have access to buying the monthly patron exclusive stickers. So yeah, you can check all of that out at patreon.com/Rossifari. And other than that, it's Zoo News time, and I have a lot to say this week, so let's get right to it.
We've been taking care of pandas, and the seals taking care of pandas. Feeding meals, we've been taking care of pandas. With Zoo News, taking care of pandas, and picking up their poos, pooping out.
All right, y'all. So we're going to start with a headline story, and it's going to be a little different than usual. So, y'all, I try not to be too political on this podcast because I believe that conservation is for everyone. And I also know that people who aren't super enamored with everything going on in the United States right now often look to animals and zoos and podcasts and even just my stupid humor as escapes. And if you've listened for a while, you know where I stand politically, but that's about it. And it has not been and never will be a focus of this podcast. However, I do want to say that I would be shocked if you don't start hearing more zoo news stories related to the current administration over the next couple weeks, months, or even years, as changes get made, executive orders get passed, and things that relate to animals and conservation come up. Now, I won't harp on those any more than I normally do, and I won't make them any more political than I have to, but I just have the feeling there are going to be a lot of things that matter to Rossifarians, and so they will be in here. But beyond that, I will try to leave politics alone. Except for right now. So if you want to skip ahead a few minutes, that's fine. I won't be offended. We have lots of cute births and fun zoo news stories ahead. My political discussion will run from now until 14 minutes and 10 seconds into the episode, so feel free to skip to that exact space if you want to. Yes, I came back and clocked it for you. You're welcome. But before that, as my headline story, I need to address the biggest news that happened this week in general, which is the fact that the United States has a new government in place. But I'm not actually interested in discussing Donald Trump that much or any of his followers, really. Instead, I want to talk about a trend that I've noticed over the last 2 days. One that is really, really bothering me. And the reason I'm even doing this is that a lot of people have told me that when I do talk about things on here, they appreciate my level-headed approach to thinking through things. And so I think there's a need for that now. So I'm going to put it out into the world and hope for the best. And again, if you don't want to hear it, skip ahead. Not offended. Cute animals coming up. Promise. But look, people are getting really, really pissed off about what's happening with the changes the Trump administration is bringing around, and rightly so. But the vast majority of things that I'm seeing people posting about are the dumbest, least consequential things that are happening. I've been keeping count, and by far and away, the two most discussed things that I'm seeing on social media, so I'm talking about in my circles here, are whether Elon Musk gave a Nazi salute and the fact that Meta is supposedly making people follow the president and maybe some other members of the administration. There is so much rage about these things. And y'all, I have to tell you, while most people are yelling about that stuff, there are real, impactful decisions being made and policies being enacted that I see almost no posts about, maybe 2 or 3. And I'm not going to get into all of those policies right now, but there are literally attempts to remove DEI initiatives from any company that accepts federal contracts. Trump has declared that in the United States, there are only 2 genders. Almost all health reporting has been suspended, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, and so much more. And these things actually matter. But whenever I get online, all I see is a bunch of discussions about whether Elon made a Nazi salute and whether that's because he's autistic or not, or whether we should all run away from Meta because suddenly people are following the @POTUS account and they're pretty sure they didn't before. And honestly, y'all, I think that's kind of what the current administration wants. For instance, for those abandoning Facebook and Instagram, as well as Twitter or X or whatever that goober is calling it these days, look, you have to do what you think is right, of course. But since their inception, major social media sites have become the places where information is able to be spread freely, where people can gather and share their thoughts and learn about what is going on in the world, even if there is a lot of disinformation and just dumb crap to wade through. And y'all know I have complicated relationships with social media and talk about that a lot. So I completely understand the urge to run away. But also, if I've learned anything from history, I've learned that that's what every single dictator and oligarch wants. People to not be able to assemble in massive areas, to not be able to spread the truths that those leaders don't want shared. I am anything but a conspiracy theorist, but I do worry that if we all walk away from our thousands of connections to start over, to try to figure out new apps and connect in new ways, we will be doing exactly what a government that has already shown they don't want information disseminated without approval, and again, we'll talk more about that in conservation news, weirdly enough, wants us to do. I've actually had a few people ask me why I don't abandon TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and move to like Blue Sky or something full time. There are a couple reasons, but the main one is simple. If I have information to share right now, a message such as this, I can reach over 120,000 followers, plus anyone else the algorithm decides to allow to take a look, with my information on those sites. And I checked just before recording this, and as of now, I can reach 35 people on Blue Sky. And yeah, I know you can build new social media just like the old, but it takes a while, and not everyone's going to Blue Sky, and people are already saying Blue Sky is secretly evil too, and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, isn't that exactly what an administration would want? If I'm going to be posting a podcast episode like this, where I talk about things maybe from a different perspective, maybe one that they don't like, that would be critical of some of their choices, wouldn't they rather me promote that to 35 people instead of to 120,000 plus? And as far as the Elon possible Nazi salute thing, look, people are so mad about this topic. And look, I get it. Nazis are the worst, and I hate them. I say that unequivocally. And to be completely honest, it wouldn't shock me if we discovered that Elon Musk had a flag with a swastika in his house somewhere. But in the full clip, which a lot of media neglected to show, Elon did that gesture and yelled, "My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured." He literally said, "My heart goes out to you," while doing a motion, grasping his heart and throwing it out to the crowd. Did it look like a Nazi salute? Abso-freaking-lutely. And you can sit and debate all day whether it was a coded message, whether it was him throwing his heart to the crowd in an awkward movement, or whether it was him trying to get away with sneaking some Nazi propaganda into the inauguration, while also having people who hear what he says almost defend him a little bit. I'm not defending the guy, but, But I will tell you this, the Anti-Defamation League and other leading anti-Semitism groups largely believe that Elon was throwing his heart awkwardly. I seriously did not have the Anti-Defamation League defending Elon Musk on my 2025 bingo card, but here we are. But the larger point I want to make is this. What you need to know about isn't that Elon made that motion or that there is a debate about it. What you need to know is that most of the media, even liberal sources, cut away from the gesture before he said, "My heart goes out to you," when they posted it. The economics of media right now, especially online media, is based entirely on how many views, comments, and interactions you get on a post. And as we've seen over the last 15 or so years, nothing gets interactions more than debates and anger and rage baiting. And a lot of people are already on edge, worried about the actual bad things the Trump administration is going to do and is already doing. So because of that and some creative editing, all of these brilliant and good and wonderful people I know and know personally are now posting on social media about Elon Musk and debating whether it was a Nazi salute or not, when that has no actual impact on what's going on in the country right now. There is real stuff happening, real stuff that really matters, and it's being completely ignored. And that is exactly what I believe this administration wants. Now, I'm not saying this is some they were playing chess and we're playing checkers kind of thing. I'm just merely saying that something happened and it's playing right into what they want. And the last thing I'm going to say about politics, and I'll keep this brief. Donald Trump is going to be the president for the next 4 years, unless something happens to him, in which case the administration will still stay on the same basic MAGA path. And I hate that. I'm being real clear here. Not a fan. But it's happening. So you need to guard your mental health. I'm not a mental health professional. I didn't even stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. But it has been 2 days as I type this. 4 days when the episode drops into a Trump administration. And if you don't take steps now to guard your mental health, the next 1,456 days might just break you. And again, that is exactly what I believe this administration wants. So thanks for listening to my missive. I am very open to discussion. You know how to find me. I'm here for it. I'm here to learn. Nazis are bad, all the things, but it's gonna be a weird couple of years, y'all. So I think we need to buckle in and take care of ourselves and each other. And that brings us to our births for the week. The Toledo Zoo has welcomed 4 North American river otter pups to Mom Tilly and Dad Winston. Tilly is doing a great job with the otlets, not needing any assistance in rearing them, though keepers are checking in. Winston is being kept separate at this time, as mothers are solely responsible for raising the young of the species. Before they go on exhibit, the cubs will be reintroduced to Winston in a controlled manner to make sure the whole family can thrive together. The National Aquarium has welcomed the hatching of 2 Mertens water monitors. Despite the name, these animals won't be actively tracking the water quality of the exhibits at the aquarium, but will in fact be growing up behind the scenes before rotating onto exhibit when they are fully grown. Now, this Australian species isn't super well studied, so every birth in human care is an awesome opportunity to help understand more about these incredible aquatic lizards. And the Indianapolis Zoo has welcomed a southern rockhopper chick to their colony. The little one will be off exhibit until it fledges in the spring, but it is already starting to socialize with the other penguins and to explore the area it is in now. And speaking of penguins, Adventure Aquarium has welcomed 2 new African penguin chicks to the colony. This is especially impressive as these penguins represent the 49th and 50th of the species born at the aquarium. Congrats to our friends at Adventure Aquarium. And then that brings us to our deaths for the week. The oldest giant river otter in the United States has passed away. Kara, who was just shy of 20 years old, lived at Zoo Miami after moving there from the Philadelphia Zoo, where she was born, back in 2008, and she spent the rest of her life at Zoo Miami, being an incredible ambassador for her species there. She gave birth to 27 pups in her time, which is obviously an incredible number. While she will be missed, her care team can say goodbye with lots of pride, knowing that she lived an amazing and super long life. Smithsonian's National Zoo has announced the passing of Kyle, a 28-year-old Bornean orangutan. While male orangutans do not parent in the traditional sense, Kyle was special in that he was a great playmate for Red, the juvenile orangutan at the zoo. He was known for his playful spirit and his very, very loud vocalizations. He was also really interested in training, allowing keepers to collect blood pressure readings, ECG readings, and radiographs that were performed while Kyle was awake. All of this not only helped with his own health care, but also contributed greatly to the store of knowledge we have about the species in general. He is sorely missed. Brevard Zoo has said goodbye to the 46-year-old female siamang that called the zoo home. She was named Sapphire, and her vocal duets with Pete, the male that lives at the zoo, were a daily part of the lives of everyone there. 46 years old is an incredible age for a female siamang, which have an average lifespan of 26.7 years. Sadly, she underwent an annual wellness exam and never fully recovered from it, so it wasn't any one specific disease that did her in. And I know that in hearing that story, you may be wondering whether it was worth the risk of putting an ancient animal under anesthesia, especially a species we don't have nearly the information about that we do with, domestic species, all for just an annual exam. So I asked this question to someone in the field and was told that there is always a risk assessment done, but that the problem with this kind of story is that it's never considered newsworthy when an animal goes into one of these exams and then comes out fine, and it's not even considered newsworthy when an animal goes into one of these exams and then they find some problem that can be medically managed to help extend the life and improve the quality of life of the animal even further. It only makes the news when the worst outcome happens, which is one of the challenges that vets face all the time. I can't imagine the grief that vets face when a decision like this is made and it doesn't turn out the way they hoped, but there is no denying that they are doing what is in the best interest of the animal in question every time, which is why we love veterinarians. So yeah, very, very sorry to hear about the loss of Sapphire, but an incredible, incredible life. The St. Louis Zoo has said goodbye to Kabara, a 19-year-old lioness who was humanely euthanized due to advanced liver disease. Kabara lived most of her life at the zoo, but was actually born in Switzerland before heading to the States, bringing some new genetics into the U.S. population and then helping to spread them through multiple litters with her partner Ngozi. When the two were younger, a really cute scene would regularly play out. Kabara would jump into a tree to take a nap, and Ngozi would sit patiently at the base of the tree, just waiting for his mate to return to him. She is greatly missed. And then last but not least in our deaths this week, the Pittsburgh Zoo has said goodbye to Socks, the 17-year-old male Maasai giraffe. Socks suffered from a chronic degeneration of the bones in her leg, which started last summer, and while the veterinary team had been able to manage the condition up to this point, that was no longer the case, so the correct decision was made to euthanize her. Before that decision was made internally, details of this unique case were shared with a group of outside experts, including a vet and technicians that specialize in giraffe immobilizations, and an experienced farrier who works with hoofed animals across the United States. Sadly, all experts agreed that there was nothing that could be done to help the condition any further. While this is a sad loss, it's also an incredible reminder of how far a zoo is willing to go just to help one animal, which I always love to point out. And moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our zoo news section. Seneca Park Zoo has announced the next step in their master plan and wilder vision, and it sounds pretty incredible. The zoo will be opening a new tropics exhibit and main entry plaza. The Tropics building will feature immersive experiences in sections featuring animals from the Madagascar rainforest and the Borneo rainforest, along with a Pacific Reef aquarium. Some of the animals that will be featured include orangutan, lemur, Komodo dragons, and blacktip reef sharks. I am really looking forward to this new building, though I'm sure it'll be, quite a while before it's built and ready to go. Ooh, and speaking of new exhibits, we've already mentioned that the Maryland Zoo will be getting red pandas this year. Now, the zoo has posted renderings of what the new exhibit will look like, along with letting everyone know that permits are approved and the construction begins in April. The exhibit looks really cool and immersive, combining the old school look of the zoo's historic main valley with new state-of-the-art exhibit design to help guests feel like they are right in with the pandas. I am really looking forward to seeing this develop from rendering to reality. Now, we've talked on here before about certain anti-zoo groups that try to bring lawsuits against zoos that hold elephants, more in the hopes of getting attention to line their own pockets and also create awareness for their misguided causes than because they actually think the lawsuits will work. The latest of these, a lawsuit against Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, was found frivolous, but that finding was then taken through the appeals process all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court, which, in a stunning decision, found that the lawsuit was frivolous. Okay, not stunning at all. It's honestly just a shame that these groups are allowed to clog up our legal system with this kind of crap time and again. But it's nice to see that it has absolutely no legal effect. The Little Rock Zoo recently put out a reminder that seems important enough to share. If you drop something into an exhibit, please let staff know ASAP. That's also true if you see something in an exhibit that shouldn't be there, like that somebody else dropped. I know it can be a little scary to find someone and tell them when something seems off, but it really does matter. If someone had done that at the Little Rock Zoo recently, the zoo wouldn't have needed to do an emergency surgery to remove a reusable silicone straw from a penguin after the penguin ate it after it ended up in the exhibit. Now, fortunately, the penguin in question is fine, but this tale does stand as a stark reminder that we can all help save animal lives if we notice something amiss at a facility. Also, the irony that it was a reusable straw, which most of us use to try to save animals, is not lost on me. Next up, we've got some giant panda news, and it turns out that pandas be poppin', yo. Is that what the kids are saying? No. Okay, anyway, the Adelaide Zoo has officially opened their giant panda habitat to the public, and the day this episode drops, Smithsonian's National Zoo will be doing the same. Panda bears are such an iconic species for many reasons, not the least of which is they are such a great example of how seeing an animal in a zoo can lead people to care about, understand, love, and eventually work to conserve a species. I'm excited more of them are popping up in zoos again after last year's withdrawal of the species globally. It's cool to see, and it's cool that it's happening in multiple places, multiple countries, multiple continents. Yay! Now we're going to end this story with just 3 really fun stories. The Keikaiokan Aquarium in Japan noticed that their sunfish was not feeling well recently and took a unique step to make it feel better. So the aquarium noticed that the fish started acting differently almost immediately after the aquarium closed to the public for renovations in December. The vet staff did all the usual cool veterinary things, but couldn't find anything physically wrong with the fish. So one of the staff members spoke up and wondered if it was possible that the fish was just feeling lonely because of the lack of visitors. Now, no one at the aquarium, including the staff member who brought it up, really thought that this was the issue, but they also didn't have any idea what was going on, so they decided to run with it. They started putting up cardboard cutouts of people and also staff uniforms all along the glass of the habitat. And the very next day, the sunfish was back in good health. Now, of course, along with the fake people, staff members did also start to make an effort to, stop by the tank more and wave at the sunfish and spend time with it. There is no way to say 100% that the problem was in fact loneliness, because the only way to test that would be to make the fish lonely again, and, the aquarium is not going to do that. But yeah, it really seems like a lonely sunfish was cheered up by a mixture of fake and real people, and I, for one, am here for it. Another fun story, Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and there are many facilities that are offering a fun and unique opportunity for the heartbroken amongst you, as they do every year. You can name a roach, a worm, or even a vegetable after an ex, and then have it fed to an animal. And while I don't embrace being a bitter ex, I do think this is a fun and silly way to raise money for zoos and aquariums. As a matter of fact, I support the idea so much that every year I go out on a ton of dates with women just to break their hearts in the hopes that they will hear about one of these programs and end up sending money to zoological facilities to name food items after me. Okay, I don't do that. But I do think it's a great way to have some fun during the season of love. So if you're so inclined, see if your local zoo or aquarium is taking part in a program like this. And if not, you can always do the Name a Roach program at the Bronx Zoo, which, as far as I can tell, was the first one of these programs. And then last but not least, in our funny zoo news, the Denver Zoo recently released an update about an unnamed Somali wild ass that was born at the zoo to Mom Daisy. The update was called a baby bulletin, and the local Fox station in Denver quickly picked up on the story, but apparently got a little confused as they wrote that the zoo had shared photos of a baby named Bulletin with the station. So close and yet so far away.
Stereotypical animal podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news.
All right, how about we start with some good conservation news? The Nordic Arctic fox population is thriving right now, which is definitely worthy of celebration. Significantly more pups were born in 2024 than even in 2023, which is a huge deal. In general, the population has been thriving and growing since the early 2000s. Back then, there were estimated to be no more than 60 adult Arctic foxes across all of Norway, Sweden, and Finland, with the population probably as low as in the 40s. Now, there are almost 600 Arctic fox adults, plus the large number of cubs being born every year. The growth is attributed to a really interesting conservation measure put in place by the Finnish Forest Administration and the WWF. Those two agencies teamed up to create and maintain feeding stations for Arctic foxes in the area, which help to support juvenile foxes through their first winter and also help adults not have to evacuate the safest areas of their habitat when their preferred prey start to become scarce. And I find this fascinating. First of all, it appears to be working really, really well, which is obviously incredible. But also, stocking feeding stations leads to a bunch of questions. Are these animals truly wild at this point? Will they be able to survive on their own if the government decides to stop paying for this program? Will each generation become more accustomed to the feeding stations and thus start to lose its ability to hunt effectively? And I'm asking all of this because these are concerns that come up when strategies like this get discussed for various species, and I think they are all valid. But on the other hand, the population has increased tenfold in around 2 decades, so it's clearly working. Definitely some food for thought, but at the end of the day, what really matters right now are the numbers, and they are numbers to celebrate. On a less happy note, Dozens of bald eagles have recently been found dead. The cause of death is believed to be suicide after realizing the state of America and feeling embarrassed to be the symbol of this nation at this time. No, wait, I misread that. It was avian influenza was the cause, which is still rocketing around North America and wiping out birds with no end in sight. In fact, I could have actually put this story in zoo news as well, because Lincoln Park Zoo recently lost a harbor seal and a Chilean flamingo to the disease. This is the third time a zoological facility has lost animals recently due to avian influenza, despite zoological managers working diligently to keep creating more extensive plans to stop the disease from destroying their collections. And of course, we've also talked about the fact that the disease has crossed into the more general human population in numerous ways, including having at least one healthy adult that has died from avian influenza, and also multiple cattle and chickens that have been killed because of it that were meant for human food. I keep thinking back to how COVID appeared when it first started, and this is definitely a different kind of spread than that, but there's a part of me that is very, very concerned that avian influenza is going to be the next COVID, the next serious disease that threatens not only animals, but human lives as well. And it appears this issue may become even larger in the United States soon, as the Trump administration has frozen almost all communication and reporting from health agencies such as the CDC. All communications must now pass through a review process by a presidential panel, meaning the Trump administration can now block the reporting of health issues and even stuff like the death of animals or humans from avian influenza. There has also been discussion of stopping research into vaccines, although there's been some debate in the administration about whether that includes trying to find a vaccine for the current strain of H1N1, but y'all, it's not great. It's not great. And this is why I was saying earlier that, like, you know, there's stuff that matters more. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Back to happy. 30 years ago, wolves were captured in British Columbia and transported to Wyoming, where they were released into the wild in Yellowstone National Park, making the first population of wolves in that area, which they used to call home, in quite some time. For 30 years now, the world has watched the reintroduction program, and the results are undeniable. The wolves are thriving. Beyond that, balance has been restored to the Yellowstone ecosystem in a way that has not been seen at all in the time that wolves were gone. And there's also the fact that wolf lovers love to flock to Yellowstone in the hopes of seeing the species in the wild, which generates millions of dollars of revenue to the area, something that totally shouldn't matter when it comes to the conservation of a species, but let's be honest, it totally does. As such, as we pass the 30th anniversary of wolves being reintroduced to Yellowstone, there is no denying that the program has been an incredible success, one that conservationists can study and learn from. And last in conservation news this week, there is a bill that is going to be introduced into Congress in the United States that could do a lot to help endangered species and wildlife in general in the U.S. Known as the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, or RAWA, the bill would provide $1.3 billion in annual funding for conservation efforts aimed at supporting at-risk, endangered, and other species. It would amend the 1937 Pittman-Robertson Act, which supported species targeted by game hunters and sportsmen. The more modern act would allocate 15% of that spending towards endangered species. It would also direct nearly $100 million annually to tribal nations to support conservation work on about 140 million acres of land they own and manage on their own, where they're already doing some of the most amazing conservation work in the U.S. at this time. The bill is intended to help direct funding to less charismatic species and is also aimed at more obscure issues than any conservation legislation that has been enacted in the history of the U.S. Some of those less charismatic species include things like the Texas heel splitter mussel, the regal fritillary butterfly, and the red knot seabird. Now, last year, the bill passed the House and a subcommittee in the Senate before just kind of falling by the wayside without a vote. However, it is a bipartisan bill, so much so that the version brought to the Senate last year had 32 sponsors, 16 from each side of the aisle. The bipartisan nature of the bill gives me hope that it will pass through the House and the Senate this year, and then it will be headed to the White House. And that's where I get concerned. The House-approved version of the bill was anticipated to raise the deficit by $14.1 billion by 2032, 10 years after passage, at a time when the current administration is trying to shrink the deficit. The bill is also to be funded primarily through fees and penalties authorized by environmental regulations, many of which are being walked back or left unenforced by the current administration. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the future of this legislation looks like, but it is something that we need and that has broad bipartisan support. So here's hoping this bill up on Capitol Hill becomes a law. And that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, now, right now it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
A new study suggests that cuttlefish show levels of self-control and reasoning that rivals that of primates, which, given most of the primates I know, doesn't actually seem to be saying much. I kid. But seriously, scientists have adapted the famous marshmallow test to measure whether cuttlefish would pass on a snack if it meant enjoying a higher value food item later on. In the marshmallow test, this is done with, you guessed it, marshmallows that are given to children. But with cuttlefish, it's done with shrimp. Once cuttlefish understood that if they didn't immediately eat the smaller shrimp, or the shrimpier shrimp, if you will, they showed patience and waited for higher value rewards. The team then took the study a step further, seeing if cuttlefish could show self-control while doing learning tasks, which they did as well. This is really cool, and in part just because it's about cuttlefish, which is a species I find endlessly fascinating. We have dwarf cuttlefish at the Aquarium of Niagara, and Ripley's Aquarium in Toronto has standard cuttlefish, and both just truly blow my mind. I can sit and stare at one of those habitats for ages, for 20, 30 minutes sometimes. They are one of the coolest species, and now knowing that they have this level of self-control is really fascinating to me. And then moving on to our last story for the week, sometimes you just stumble upon a story that proves that the other news section deserves to be a part of this podcast, and this is one of those. Italian soccer club Lazio has an eagle mascot, and for years and years, Juan Bernabe, a local falconer, has been the handler of their bald eagle that they fly at games. However, Bernabe has now been fired. Why? Well, it's because he shared videos online of his own prosthetic penis. Yep, he had a prosthetic penis implant and shared videos of it in order to bring awareness to the operation. But the club didn't appreciate the gesture and decided to sack him immediately. Now, before you feel too badly for him, the prosthetic penis pump procedure porn isn't the only issue the club has had with Bernabe. He was suspended in 2021 for performing a fascist salute at the end of a match, aiming it at the team from Milan, apparently referencing Benito Mussolini. And I'm pretty sure he wasn't throwing his heart out to the crowd. So, yeah, he's been fired. And yeah, I only wanted to share this story because I wanted to say prosthetic penis pump procedure porn. You're welcome.
Animal, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal, animal holidays.
All right, it's our last full week of January, and that doesn't get its own animal month yet, so we move on to the individual days. The 25th is Moose Day and the International Day of Education. The 28th is Rattlesnake Appreciation Day and World Jeffrey's Cat Day. And the 29th is actually Chinese New Year. And this year is the Year of the Snake, which you can prepare for the day before by appreciating some rattlesnakes and getting ready for it. And those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another episode of Zoo News featuring some political ranting. Hope you didn't mind. Hope you appreciated what I had to say, but also hope you enjoyed all the other stuff. And yeah, I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of my Red Panda level patrons, including Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. I'd also like to thank everyone who sent me stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbook, April Taylor, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Barbara Bennett, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Natalie Taco, Crystal Chapman, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
Ann Yoshioka, Daniel Cohen, Jay Meredith, Jacob Zinn, and Sarah Gilsol. Thank you all so much for contributing to this week's episode. And remember, friends, the words, news and credits backwards, or Snyder Cuse one. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. And that brings us to our birth for... I just do a 10-minute political rant without pausing and then stumble over, and that brings us to our births for the week. Yes, I did.